In the distant future, humanity had long since broken free of Earth's boundaries, expanding across the stars. It was a time of growth, discovery, and hope, but also a time of danger, as humanity encountered many alien species, some friendly, others far less so. The galaxy was vast, and many civilizations had come and gone, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. One such civilization, the Sarath, arrived with thunderous authority. Towering ships, gleaming with unfamiliar metals and powered by technologies far beyond human understanding, entered the solar system like a dark cloud. These aliens, the Sarath, were proud and arrogant, believing themselves to be divine beings, gods in their own right. They called themselves the Eternal Ones, and from the moment they arrived, their attitude toward humanity was one of disdain. The Sarath saw humans as little more than primitive creatures, insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. To them, Earth's people were little more than savages who had yet to earn their place among the stars. They declared that humanity must submit to their authority or face extinction, but the Sarath underestimated something crucial about the humans they had so quickly dismissed. While they viewed humans as inferior, they didn't realize the strength, determination, and untapped potential that pulsed through every human heart. Humanity had always thrived on adversity, on fighting against the odds. Their spirit was not easily crushed, and though they lacked the advanced technology of the Sarath, they had something far more dangerous: resourcefulness. And it was this very spirit that would soon make itself known. At a remote research facility on one of Earth's moons, a group of rogue scientists and engineers had been working on a secret project. Their mission had been born from necessity, as the Sarath's arrival had cast a shadow of fear over humanity's future. A select few, who refused to bow to the Sarath, had embarked on building an experimental starship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ship was named the Tongue, and it was unlike anything Earth had produced before. Using a mix of Earth's finest technologies and salvaged alien technology from previous encounters, the Tongue was a masterpiece of engineering. Its design was sleek, yet fierce, its power core a marvel of human ingenuity and alien knowledge. The ship had capabilities beyond any ship currently known to man, able to move faster than light and capable of doing far more than simply travel. It was a weapon, a ship that could strike fear into the hearts of the Sarath. But the most terrifying feature of the Tongue was its potential to unlock the very survival of humanity. While the Sarath were busy imposing their will on the human governments, a series of strange signals were intercepted by the team working on the Tongue. At first, the signals seemed like static, just random noise from the depths of space. But after closer analysis, the team realized the signals weren't random at all. They were coded messages, coming from deep within Sarath space, and though their full meaning was unclear, one thing was certain: they held the key to humanity's survival. This discovery sent a wave of shock and excitement through the research facility. The Sarath had no idea that while they believed they were in control, humanity had just unearthed something that could shift the balance of power forever. The team of scientists and engineers quickly realized that the Tongue could not only help humanity survive, but could also become the very tool to challenge the Sarath's dominion over the galaxy. As the Sarath continued to tighten their grip on Earth, demanding absolute compliance, the small group of rebels, led by the brilliant Captain Mira Hale, prepared to launch the Tongue on its maiden voyage. The ship wasn't ready in the traditional sense, but it was far more dangerous than any conventional weapon. The crew was ready to make their stand, knowing they had a single chance to turn the tide. The mysterious signals pointed to something much deeper, something the Sarath had kept hidden for centuries. The true nature of the Sarath's power was not as divine as they made it seem. Their gods were nothing more than manipulators of technology and fear. The Tongue was the key to revealing their true vulnerability. With the Sarath unaware of the threat building against them, humanity was about to take its first step toward freedom, a step that would change the galaxy forever. The game was no longer about survival. It was about challenging the gods themselves. And the first move was about to be made by a small crew aboard a ship built not just for war, but for the very survival of humanity. The rebellion was small at first, barely a whisper against the thunder of the Surath's empire. But under the leadership of Captain Mira Hale, humanity's defiance began to take shape. Hale was no stranger to battle. A seasoned veteran with a rebellious spirit, she had once served in Earth's military before the Surath's overwhelming force shattered the fragile peace humanity had fought so hard to build. Now, she was something else, a symbol of hope and resistance. With the Tongue, the ship she and a small band of rogue scientists and engineers had built, she led the charge for humanity's survival. Though the ship was far from complete, it was a marvel of human ingenuity. With its advanced propulsion systems, capable of faster-than-light travel, and its lethal weaponry, the ship was ready to strike. The Surath, unaware of the full power of the Tongue, had no idea that the ship was more than just a weapon. It was a key to breaking their hold over the galaxy. Mira knew the odds were stacked against them. The Surath had fleets of warships, technological superiority, and a belief that they were untouchable. They saw humanity as nothing more than an annoyance, something to be wiped away like dust. But that arrogance would be their undoing. The human resistance, though small in number, was fierce. They had no choice but to fight, and they would use every advantage, every scrap of information, and every flaw they could find in the Surath's plans. Captain Hale and her crew launched their first covert operation, targeting Surath-controlled stations in the Outer Rim. The mission was dangerous, but it was necessary. Every victory, no matter how small, sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity was not going to lie down and be conquered. With every strike, the resistance grew bolder. The Tongue darted across space like a phantom, slipping past Surath sensors, hitting targets before the enemy could react. Human ingenuity had turned the tide in ways the Surath had never expected. It was as if the very essence of humanity's spirit had been harnessed into this ship. Mira and her crew sabotaged energy grids, took out communication relays, and destroyed critical supply lines, all without ever engaging the Surath directly. These were precise, calculated moves, small operations with enormous consequences. The Surath were not accustomed to being challenged like this. They had conquered countless worlds, subjugated entire species, and believed that their sheer size and advanced technology made them invincible. They saw the human resistance as nothing more than a nuisance, a distraction to be dealt with when the time came. But as the attacks mounted, something started to shift. The Surath gods, so sure of their power, grew frustrated. They had underestimated the humans. They mocked the resistance, dismissing it as a fleeting phase. "Let them have their petty victories," they said. "Their ship is nothing more than a toy, and their rebellion will die as quickly as it came." The Surath had never encountered a species that refused to bow to them, and the idea that humans could strike at their empire from within seemed laughable. But with every attack, the humans revealed just how resourceful they were, how relentless. The Tongue was proving to be far more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of defiance, a rallying cry for all those who had once thought that freedom was beyond their reach. The Surath began to notice that their operations were being hindered, their fleets delayed, and their resources dwindling. There was no sign of an army rising to oppose them, just a steady, quiet stream of sabotage that seemed to come from nowhere. They believed it was the work of a few scattered rebels, not understanding the full scale of the human resistance. They had no idea that it was a carefully orchestrated campaign, one that was about to hit them in ways they could not imagine. Captain Hale knew the Surath would grow impatient, and that they would soon unleash their full fury. But by then, it would be too late. The rebellion was no longer just about survival. It was about proving that the Sroth could be beaten, that humanity could stand against them and win. As the resistance grew stronger, so did the sense of urgency. The human spirit was a force that could not be easily crushed, and the Sroth were about to find that out the hard way. Captain Hale and her crew knew that their actions were sparking something much larger, a wave of resistance that would spread across the galaxy. It was no longer just about the tongue. It was about something far bigger. A fight for freedom, for humanity's place among the stars. And the Sroth, with all their arrogance and belief in their invincibility, were just beginning to realize they had awoken a sleeping giant. As the human resistance continued to strike deeper into Sroth-controlled space, Captain Mira Hale and her crew found themselves growing bolder. Each successful raid on a Sroth installation brought them one step closer to their ultimate goal, bringing down the very foundation of the Sroth's so-called empire. The Tongue, their mysterious ship, had already proven itself as a formidable weapon. It was swift, deadly, and capable of disabling entire fleets with minimal effort. But as they pressed forward, Captain Hale began to uncover something even more astonishing, something that would change the entire course of the rebellion. In the quiet of the ship's command center, Mira reviewed the ship's design specifications once again. It was then that a horrifying truth dawned on her. The Tongue was not just a weapon of war. It had been built with a far greater purpose in mind. It was designed not merely to destroy, but to neutralize the very heart of the Sroth's technological superiority. Deep within the archives, Mira discovered an encrypted blueprint hidden among the data streams. What she saw left her stunned. The Tongue was engineered to hijack and cripple the Sroth's advanced communication networks, a network so vast and powerful it had been the cornerstone of their empire. Without it, the Sroth would be crippled, unable to coordinate their fleets, unable to communicate across the stars, and most importantly, unable to summon the very divine presence they had used to manipulate and control others for centuries. The connection to their gods, that very aura of invincibility, was entirely reliant on this technology. If the humans could sever that connection, the Sroth would no longer be able to maintain their position as the self-proclaimed rulers of the galaxy. Mira's heart raced as she understood the full implications of this revelation. The Resistance's mission had just evolved into something far more dangerous and far more vital. The crew of the Tongue had the power to not only defeat the Sroth militarily, but to shatter their very sense of dominance. No longer would humanity be forced to cower under the shadow of these so-called gods. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the opportunity to strike a blow that would echo across the galaxy. But there was no time to waste. The Sroth, now aware of the growing threat, had begun to fortify their positions and prepare for retaliation. Their next target, the heart of the Sroth Empire, was the Great Temple, a supermassive space station that served as both their headquarters and their religious sanctum. It was there that the highest-ranking Sroth leaders resided, and it was within the depths of this station that they kept the secrets of their immortality. The Great Temple was more than just a symbol of power. It was the source of the Sroth's unchallenged rule over the galaxy. If the humans could infiltrate it and destroy the core communication system, the Sroth's entire empire could be crippled in one fell swoop. Mira called a meeting with her crew. Their objective was clear, but the risks were staggering. Infiltrating the Great Temple would be no small feat. It was heavily guarded, surrounded by fleets of Sroth warships, and its defenses were unlike anything the Resistance had faced before. But the crew knew that the time for hesitation had passed. With their ship, the Tongue, they had already defied the odds. Now they were about to face their greatest challenge yet. The preparations for the assault began immediately. The crew worked around the clock, fine-tuning the Tongue's systems, making sure that every detail was perfect. They knew that this was their one shot. If they failed, the Sroth would undoubtedly retaliate with overwhelming force. But if they succeeded, it would be the end of the Sroth's reign and a new chapter for humanity. The humans would not just Survive. They would prove their place in the galaxy, not as pawns, but as a force to be reckoned with. Mira stood at the command deck, staring out at the stars. She could feel the weight of the mission pressing on her shoulders, but she knew one thing for certain. Humanity was ready. No longer would they be seen as savages. No longer would they bend to the will of others. This was their moment, their chance to strike back at the gods themselves. The countdown had begun, and the fate of the galaxy now rested in their hands. As the tongue powered up, Mira's voice cut through the silence. Prepare for the final assault. The Surath won't know what hit them. The stars burned bright as the tongue surged through the darkness, carrying Captain Mira Hale and her crew toward the heart of the Surath Empire. The final confrontation had arrived, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Ahead of them loomed the Great Temple, a massive space station surrounded by waves of Surath warships, each one a fortress of deadly power. The Resistance had fought valiantly to get this far, but now they were about to face their greatest challenge, an all-out battle that would determine whether humanity would survive or fall under the rule of the Surath. As the tongue approached, the Great Temple, the Surath fleets descended upon them like a swarm of hornets. Their ships were vast and formidable, equipped with weaponry that could obliterate anything in their path. Waves of plasma fire lit up the void as the Surath opened. Fire. The Resistance had no illusions about the danger they were facing. But what they lacked in sheer firepower, they more than made up for in ingenuity. The crew of the Tongue had spent countless hours refining their weapon systems, and now it was time to put their skills to the test. Captain Hale's voice rang, out through the command center, steady and calm despite the chaos around them. We need to outsmart them. Keep moving, hit hard, and don't let up. Her plan was simple but daring. Use the ship's advanced technology and hacking capabilities to disrupt the Surath systems, causing confusion within their ranks. The Tongue wasn't just a warship, it was a weapon of deception. And in the UI, heart of battle, deception would be their greatest advantage. The crew sprang into action. Engineers worked furiously at their stations, coordinating with the ship's AI to breach the Surath's defense systems. Within moments, they had infiltrated the communication networks of the Surath fleet. The result was immediate and chaotic. Surath ships began to turn on each other, their weapons malfunctioning, their shields flickering. Confusion spread like wildfire as the human crew exploited every weakness. Their limited weaponry, though less powerful than the Surath's, was highly effective when used strategically. One by one, Surath ships fell, disabled by well-placed strikes or caused to self-destruct by the sabotage in their systems. For the first time, the Surath were caught off guard. The humans had become more than an annoyance. They were a force to be reckoned with. With their enemies in disarray, the Tongue pressed forward, cutting through the remaining defense lines and breaching the outer walls of the Great Temple. The space station loomed ahead, its dark spires reaching into the void like the fingers of a giant. As they entered the station's massive docking bay, Mira's heart pounded. They were inside, but this was only the beginning. The real battle would take place within the station's walls, where the Surath had prepared their final line of defense. The crew moved swiftly, their mission clear: disable the core systems, destroy the Surath's communication network, and uncover the secrets hidden within. As they infiltrated the inner sanctum of the Great Temple, they discovered something that shattered everything they had believed about the Surath. The so-called gods of the Surath were not divine beings at all. They were biological super soldiers, genetically engineered to be stronger, faster, and more resilient than ordinary beings. Their belief in their own superiority was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie, an illusion perpetuated by their own propaganda. The Surath had convinced themselves that they were gods because their advanced biology and technology had given them immense power. But beneath the surface, they were vulnerable, just like any other species. As Mira and her team pressed deeper into the heart of the station, they realized that the Sroth's arrogance had blinded them to their own weaknesses. The leaders of the Sroth had surrounded themselves with false worship, believing their own myth of immortality and invincibility. Yet, in the deepest chambers of the Great Temple, where their most sacred secrets were stored, the crew discovered the truth. The Sroth had no immortality. Their supposed divine power was rooted in their technology, but without it, they were nothing. The moment they severed the connection to their communication network, the Sroth would fall. No gods, no immortality, just a fractured empire built on lies. With this revelation in mind, Mira knew what had to be done. The plan was no longer just about crippling the Sroth's fleet. It was about destroying the illusion of their invincibility. The tide of battle had turned in favor of humanity. The humans had shown the galaxy that no species, no matter how advanced, could claim dominion over others forever. As the tongue prepared for the final strike, the crew steeled themselves for the moment that would change the course of history. The gods of the Sroth had been revealed for what they truly were, mere mortals. And now, humanity was ready to take its place as the true rulers of the stars. The final showdown arrived as the crew of the Tongue made their way deeper into the heart of the Great Temple. The Sroth gods, once believed to be invincible, were about to face their greatest reckoning. Captain Mira Hale led her team through the labyrinthine corridors of the station, their footsteps echoing in the silence as they moved with purpose. They had fought their way past countless obstacles, and now, at long last, they stood on the threshold of the Sroth's most sacred domain. The time had come to end their reign of terror. The Sroth had always relied on one thing above all else: their ability to manipulate their technology to create the illusion of divine power. They had conquered planets, subjugated entire civilizations, and maintained their supremacy through fear. The truth was, their so-called gods were nothing more than genetically enhanced soldiers with a carefully crafted mythos that had allowed them to maintain control. But now, the truth was about to be exposed to the galaxy. The humans had infiltrated their strongest defenses, and the Sroth gods' carefully constructed empire was crumbling from within. With a quiet command, Captain Hale activated the advanced systems of the Tongue. The ship, a masterpiece of human ingenuity, hummed to life as its systems interfaced with the heart of the temple's communication network. The Sroth had used their communications to give them the power to control, to manipulate the galaxy into submission, but now it was time to silence them forever. Mira's fingers danced across the controls as the ship's systems began to infiltrate the Sroth's core. In a matter of seconds, the vast network that connected the Sroth's gods to their supposed divine power went dark. The gods' tongues were silenced. Across the temple, the Sroth leaders, who had once basked in their illusory omnipotence, now felt the weight of their vulnerability. For the first time, they were cut off from their ability to command their fleets, to manipulate the galaxy with their technology, and to claim their false divinity. Mira and her crew watched as chaos erupted in the heart of the station. The once confident Sroth gods, who had demanded fear and respect, now found themselves exposed for what they truly were: power-hungry conquerors who had relied on manipulation and fear to maintain their reign. The humans didn't hesitate. They moved swiftly, dismantling the remaining defenses of the Sroth gods and capturing the leaders who had once been untouchable. The Sroth gods tried to fight back, but their strength had been in their control of technology, and now that control was gone. The humans, armed with nothing but their courage and determination, had won. The resistance had proven that no matter how powerful an enemy might seem, there was always a way to stand against them. With the Sroth's divine power nullified, their empire began to unravel. The humans had shown the galaxy that they would never submit, not to fear, not to oppression, and certainly not to a race that thought themselves gods. As the last of the Sroth leaders were captured, Captain Hale stood at the center of the temple, looking out over the battlefield that had once been the symbol of the Sroth's invincibility. There was no fanfare, no great celebration. The victory was silent but profound. Humanity had fought not just for survival, but for the right to define their own destiny. The term savage would no longer be a label pinned on them by those who sought to control them. Humanity had proven their worth, their strength, and their resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. The crew of the Tongue gathered in the command center, their faces weary but resolute. Mira looked around at her team: engineers, soldiers, scientists, and survivors, people who had all come together in the name of freedom. "We've done it," she said, her voice filled with quiet pride. "The galaxy is ours now." The rebellion had not only dismantled the Sroth's empire, but it had ushered in a new era, an era where humanity would rise, unshackled from the chains of fear and manipulation. No longer would they be treated as savages. The humans had proven their place among the stars, not as subjugated beings, but as rulers of their own fate. And as they stood on the precipice of this new beginning, they knew the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had faced its darkest hour, fought against insurmountable odds, and emerged victorious. They had shown the universe that they were not to be underestimated, and that their will to protect their freedom and their future was unbreakable. As Mira Hale looked toward the stars, a new chapter in the history of humankind began. The rebellion was over, but humanity's journey had only just begun.